Most $100 gaming PCs are complete garbage. My first one growing up couldn't even run Roblox at 720p. But what if I told you it's possible to build one that crushes Fortnite, CS2, Valorant, and more at 1080p for less than $100? Well, that's exactly what I did over 4 months of insane deal hunting. No sponsors, no free parts. And today I'm gonna show you exactly how I built the absolute fastest possible $100 gaming PC. Now, because I already have a fairly powerful computer, you might be wondering why I'm doing this in the first place. Well, I actually tried this challenge earlier this year, and while the results were decent, this one might just be the best possible $100 desktop for competitive gaming. To pull this off, I had to go with the tried and true strategy of starting with the fastest office PC I could afford and upgrading it from there. Although building a fully custom PC at this price is an option, it's almost always going to give you worse performance. This time I found an even better deal than before. After nearly a month of waiting, I finally sniped a Dell Optiplex with an i7-6700 and 16GB of RAM. For context, it's around 40 to 45% faster than the i5-6500 in the last office PC I used, which is a huge upgrade, especially for CPU-intensive games, which are the majority of the most popular games today. And in terms of value, this was the absolute best price to performance I could get within the budget. If I went just one generation newer, I'd be paying $100 for 7% more performance. So yeah, this was clearly the smartest purchase I could have made for playing CPU-based games. But of course, with a deal this good, there had to be a catch. Yo, what the fuck is this? It looks like 54 birds took a shit on the side panel. But for $60, you don't buy it for the looks. So I opened it up and sure enough, it was missing the hard drive and didn't come with an operating system either. So before we can even test to see if the thing works in the first place, we need to upgrade it with a brand new, used SSD. Luckily, SATA SSDs are dirt cheap these days. So to make sure that the PC wasn't held back by slow storage, I grabbed a 128GB drive for $5. It's nothing fancy, but it has speeds of around 150 megabytes per second, so it should get the job done. However, if you're building a budget PC for yourself, please buy at least a 256GB SSD if you want to download more than 2 games at a time. Again, I only bought a 128 to keep the build as cheap as possible. Regardless, I've never actually bought a used SSD in my life because you don't usually save enough money for it to make sense. But let me remind you, we are on an extremely tight budget here, and every penny we save counts. But now it was the moment of truth, booting up the desktop for the first time. If this $60 Optiplex didn't turn on or didn't have the right specs, this entire video could end right now. It did turn on, but something was very wrong.
Ew, why are you running at 8 billion RPM?
The fans were blasting like it was trying to fly away. So I shut it down immediately and thought that it would probably be a good idea to install Windows before turning it on again. Yeah, I probably should have done that at the start. I went with Windows 10 because it's simple, so for the people patiently waiting for me to install Arch or Ubuntu, give me at least 5 more years. Anyways, this time it was actually going smoothly. Until it wasn't. Turns out the SSD had an MBR partition table and my install media was incompatible. Not a big deal though because I'm a freaking genius and fixed it with a few diskpart commands. We were good to go. Once the install was done, it was time to see if I did indeed get the specs I paid for. And after opening up Task Manager, we sadly got exactly what we paid for. Hey, W's in the chat, W's. Oh. Damn, I really got 0 fans, but the real challenge hadn't even started yet. Now that we know the Optiplex works, it was time to tackle the most important part of any gaming PC, the graphics card. And this is where I really started to feel the pressure from the $100 budget. There is nothing under $35. Okay, this is crazy. For this build, I went with something a little unexpected, the NVIDIA Quadro K4200. Unless you've seen my video on it or you're a nerd, you've probably never even heard of this GPU. It was originally designed as a $400 workstation grade professional graphics card made for 3D modeling, CAD, and other industrial workloads. But now you can find it for as little as $21 on the used market. But you might be wondering why I went with such a cheap GPU when I still have $40 left. Why not something like the AMD Radeon RX 580, a respectable gaming GPU I managed to grab off the used market for just $35? Well, here's the problem. On paper, the RX 580 is almost 80% faster than the Quadro K4200, and it only costs 50% more. So surely going with Nvidia in this situation is a huge mistake. But in practice, it's completely unusable in this system because the RX 580 requires at least a 450 watt power supply to run safely. And unfortunately, most office PCs, including this Optiplex, don't come with a power supply that comes anywhere near 450 watts. This PC only has a 240 watt stock PSU, and in the last 4 months of checking, I haven't seen a single Dell Optiplex, Lenovo ThinkStation, or HP Z2 under $100 that came with anything higher than 290 watts. Sure, I could upgrade the power supply, but that's not a cheap upgrade. It would push the total build way past $100. Then it wouldn't really be a challenge anymore, and this would just become the meta $150 gaming PC. So specifically for this challenge, the K4200 is simply the only option. Not only is it less power hungry, but it also comes with 4GB of VRAM, which is actually very solid for a GPU in this price range. For comparison, Zach Tekturf's $100 build, which is already quite the respectable setup, used the 3GB version of the GTX 1060. But that GPU cost him $59, made him spend less on the CPU, and pushed his total to $109, which I am not allowed to do. But just when I thought I finally found the perfect card, I ran into a major problem. The K4200 still needs a 6-pin power connector. And to nobody's surprise, this office PC doesn't have a 6-pin power connector. There was no way to power this card unless I stretched my budget or got a little risky. And since I was already so committed to keeping this build under $100, you could probably guess what I did. I went on eBay and found the cheapest dual SATA to 6-pin adapter I could find. However, SATA adapters are notorious for melting and even catching fire, so if you weren't already convinced that you should probably spend more for your own build, I hope you are now. On top of that, dual SATA can only provide about 36 to 48 watts, and the K4200 consumes up to 108! Though luckily 75 of that comes from the PCIe slot, so we only need 33 from the adapter. Still, I was keeping a close eye on the cables the entire time so I don't accidentally blow up my house. Nonetheless, I grabbed the most affordable adapter I could find online, which cost just $3.36. That brings our grand total to just under $100. But even with the power issue figured out, there were many more obstacles to come. I think I finally understand why people buy pre-built PCs instead. Because when I first tried to plug the GPU into the motherboard slot, something was in the way.
Something's in my eye.
The I/O shield was hitting part of the case, so the GPU physically couldn't fit inside. Fortunately, the K4200 makes it easy to just unscrew the shield, unlike bigger graphics cards where you typically have to disassemble the entire thing to remove it. After circumcising my GPU, it slides in perfectly, even though it is the biggest $20 GPU I've ever owned and probably ever will. With the graphics card now barely jammed into place and powered by a $3 adapter that might literally catch fire, there was only one thing left to do. It's finally time to find out how a $100 gaming PC actually performs in the most popular competitive games in the world. Despite building this for Fortnite, it turns out that this system destroys Rocket League too. With high render quality, this thing easily breezes through with well over 200 FPS. And for casual players or even people who just want their game to look nice and beautiful, you can still play the game over 150 FPS at fully max settings. Next up is Valorant, the most CPU heavy game in the lineup. But thanks to the i7-6700, the game runs like a dream with 208 average FPS at medium settings. My gameplay on the other hand is an absolute nightmare, as I am probably the worst player to ever touch this game. In Counter-Strike 2, we're getting over 110 FPS on average at 1080p low settings. And even the high preset does pretty well at above 60. Without upscaling though, it does drop down to the mid 40s, so playing at native 1080p high settings is probably not the move. And to finish off the benchmarks, let's try out Fortnite. Finally a game that I'm actually good at.
Appreciate it, gang.
Oh! Knowing that this game was the reason this gaming PC was built in the first place, it shouldn't come as a surprise that it runs incredibly smoothly. We're getting a 130 FPS average and over 160 FPS on the smaller reload map. And when you cap it at 120 FPS, this game feels pretty much flawless on this computer, apart from a few minuscule drops, which are very normal even on my main PC. It's really just a problem with the game itself, so I can't really blame the computer. Earlier, I said most $100 gaming PCs are complete trash, but these results were super impressive, especially because we didn't even optimize it yet. So without a doubt, this challenge was a success, but the craziest part is this wasn't even my cheapest build. So if you want to see how I turned a $0 library computer into a proper gaming PC, watch this video next.